ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Erudition Network. This is the Erudition Network Interactive Black History and Knowledge Session. I am Eddie Phillips, and this is our Thursday night Black History Extravaganza. Oh, sorry. Got a little carried away with the whole intro. Hey, we were having a little bit of issues. If I freeze up a little bit tonight, I apologize. We had some weather. We still got weather coming in. As you know, the country's having crazy weather. It seems like when we have weather out here, we tend to have issues with the internet, and we apologize ahead of time. If you see us freezing a little bit, please bear with us. Hopefully it will not be that bad. Seems like it's doing pretty well right now, but I want to give you the heads up. Also, if you are a person who wants to leave comments for the Erudition Network, and you want to comment on this interactive program tonight, I would ask that you go to our Erudition Network main page on Facebook. We noticed that when you are on the main page, on the Erudition page, we see all of your comments. And so we really would like you to hit that page. If you are one of those the folks who want to leave comments, please do so. We're streaming to a little bit less right now to go to the main page, because we want people to go to our YouTube and our main Facebook pages in order to comment. All right. See who's up in here right now. I see we got two people up here. We'll see. Hopefully we'll get some people to come in. What are you on this evening? Oh, I'm on the internet. Obviously I'm streaming right here. Eric, good to see you. I need some of whatever it is. Oh, I hope that you made the knowledge and not my extravaganza opening, which was a little bit over the top and probably just a little bit, how people thinking something is wrong. Sean Anthony, good to see you. Good to see you. Hey, I had a great time this past couple of days. I sat down and watched a program about cult leaders with my son, and we both found it very illuminating. Me and Sean Anthony sat down and watched all of that, and it was pretty crazy. Some things I knew, but as in anything that you watch, you learn new things, and there were certain things that we found out, and I thought it was a really good series for us to sit there and watch. It's on Netflix. I forget the exact name. Maybe Sean Anthony remembers, but we sat down and we watched that, and I do recommend it, just so that you can see how these things are playing into our current modern world. But what are we on about tonight? Ooh, that's actually a good question, because here's the thing. There's so much going on out here that, we could go many different places. However, I think probably the best place that we can start is this whole skilled worker slave thing. No, you know what? Let's not even go there first. The first place I think we should go is something that has been disturbing me. And I'm not going to try to show this individual, but what I am going to do, if you will bear with me for a second, is I'm going to show you. I'm going to pull this up. Because this bothers me. I was looking at an interview with an individual recently, and he was on an interview wearing one of these pieces of clothing. And these pieces of clothing are actually everywhere now. People think that they're doing something by wearing them, and it's kind of disturbing. You know, we're in a country right now where folks are telling us that we can't research or share our history, and I want to start here first tonight because to me this was just crazy. And I'm not going to put the individual who I saw wearing it on blast. I'm just going to show you the garment of clothing, and we'll go from there. So they got 1619 hats, shirts, hoodies, all of these different clothing items are out here. And I like for the few of you who are on right now, the three of you who I see on right now, and please go to our main page to tell me, what do you think about 1619 clothing succinctly? You know, do you think that it is something that we should wear, or you could go that way, or do you give me why you think that it's important or not important that we should be wearing this? I like your thoughts on it. I'll give you just a moment. Because I think this is crazy. Anybody? It's for you all here. What you think about 1619 clothing? What's your thoughts on it? Okay. No thoughts? Nobody has any thoughts? Teddy. Personally, I don't like it. I don't like to only be identified as slave knowing the Africans were here before. Good point. Anybody else? Anybody else? That's a very good point, Teddy. That's my take on some of it, but I want to get different points on here on how people feel about it, because it has become a marketing tool. It has become a marketing tool. Now we could say, I hear people argue that it's creating awareness. I hear that. Eric said he doesn't know. So I'm going to say this to you. You see this? They're wearing these shirts. And if you don't know what this shirt actually says, it talks about how, in August of 1619, a ship appeared in the horizon near Point Comfort, on the crest of Point Comfort, and how 20 enslaved Africans were sold to the colonists. Well, that's a lie. That shirt right there is a lie. But it's a lie that people are walking around with. I'm not saying that indentured servants didn't get here in 1619. Let me clarify this history with her for you. Excuse me. I was trying to adjust myself. We're not saying that. What we're not going to say is that everybody who was on that ship was, by definition of what we consider to be slavery, a slave. Right? We're not going to say that, because the truth is they were indentured. And we've talked about this before. They were indentured. Thus meaning that they could buy their way or work their way out of slavery. So when we put up those issues, we're actually not being truthful, right? We're actually not being truthful. Remember, recently, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about a guy named Anthony Johnson. Anthony Johnson, the name that sounds like it could just be somebody that's in your family or somebody that you was friends with. But he was one of the people who arrived as an indentured servant, right? Anthony Johnson worked his way out of his slavery, right? And he actually took, as a black man, took on slaves himself. But here's the thing about that whole 1619 issue. We got folks, celebrities, people appearing on CNN, MSNBC, and different outlets showcasing 1619. And my thought, and if you follow me for any amount of time, you know that I feel that when we focus only on 1619 and we put shirts and things out like that, what we're saying is we're identifying ourselves as our history starting with enslavement. That's what we do. And we get on here and we argue with people that know. You quite literally see people get on and say, no, my ancestors got here as enslaved in 1619. And that's lunacy. Because here's the reality. We were over here a long time before that. Blacks were here Africans were here a long time before that. Africans were here before recognized time. In the 1500s, they were here. Right? And so when we discharge and say that they only got here with the arrival of Europeans, right? Or whites in Virginia, we take away from what folks were actually over here doing. We came over here as explorers. We came over here as sailors. We came over here as merchants. We came over. Everybody that came over here didn't come over here in 1619 to be a slave. Now, let's get into Ron DeSantis. So Ron DeSantis and Florida's curriculums on African American study are saying that blacks, right, got things from antebellum, from slavery, right? They were blacksmiths, cooks, maids, gardeners, millers, distillers, tailors, tanners. They were all of these things. Here's the funny part. He's right. He's absolutely right in that. But this is the twist on why you have to learn your history, right? The facts are that though we were over here as these things, right, that we also were enslaved. Thus meaning that they made no profit without the permission, guidance, or usurping of their owner. And it's important to know this, because if you don't know this history, you will find yourself believing the lie. And there's actually a black historian who got on television, I think it was last week, and argued the facts of the history. But that's just the subterfuge. That's the crap. That's the crap that we tend to fall into, because a lot of us, we don't know our history. So what we do is we get up and we argue foolery. We get on CNN. We get on these media stations, right? And we lie, or we tell half-truths to people as if we know the history behind it, and we don't. We don't. it's frustrating to me a lot of times as a person who teaches history to go through a lot of this. Because a lot of times I sit and I'm looking at what people are saying and doing, right? And how they're playing a game, an obsequious game. They're pleasing somebody out here by telling us these mistruths, these lies, these fallacies. If you are in the chat tonight and you are here with us and you haven't chimed in, at least let us know that you're here and that you're with us live, so that we can we know that you're here, so that we can admonish you and who you are. As a matter of fact, I do all of this stuff while I'm doing this program. But I want people to come in and join us live. I want you to come join us live. Some people, they haven't clicked on the Erudition main page and support us on our Facebook page. And so this is an opportunity for you to go and do that. I'm going to put this in the chat. It's where you could join us on YouTube. But let me answer some of your questions here. That implies we had no skills before being taken. Yes, it does. I agree, Eric, which is why we know it, which we know is why, because they took them for a reason. Okay. I was trying to understand what you were saying there, Teddy. I see now that you is a lie, not why. Okay. It's a lie. It is a ridiculous argument that's like me saying during the Holocaust, the Jews weren't all killed. They learned valuable managerial skills. Someone had to guide people into those ovens. I mean, it is a lunacy. It's a fallacy. It's a lie. And, but even behind the lie, what we're seeing also is people who, they play around. It's more of a fallacy because there's hints of truth in the midst of the lie. This kid is crazy. But because we don't know that, right? Because we don't know that, there were black men who worked, actually had shops, right? Actually had shops that they worked in for whites in town, right? So the truth of that is that, yeah, they were workers. And you could sit there and play with the history and say that they were out there making money. As a matter of fact, there were a lot of them who were blacksmiths and tailors and laborers who were labored out and were hired out. But at the end of the day, they had to return back to that plantation, back to that owner who owed them. Here's the issue with that. When we only focus on our antebellum history, when we only focus on where we, how we were enslaved, because that's another thing that I'm hearing. Everybody now is out here trying to say, don't say slaves, say they were enslaved, right? Because if there's a difference here. Here's the thing. When you say enslave, it means you make someone a slave. I get that. But let's also understand what the term slave means too, right? And again, it gets down to the semantics. The semantics. Okay, you were enslaved. Maybe you were forced to be a slave. A person that's a slave is someone who is put into slavery and forced to work and obey. So when I say I was a slave, that means that I am slaved. Now, while we're arguing the semantics of enslaved and slave, we missed the whole point. The whole point, right, of the fact that these people were slaves. And because we're so focused on should we call them, say they enslaved or slave, we forget the people who were here before. We forget the folks who were here working before that. We forget those free men who came over here, those who were never slaves, that are still our ancestors. Those who were never slaves and still fought for their enslaved brothers. Some who allowed and tried to help their brothers escape. Some who were the architects and constructors of what we later became known as the Underground Railroad. We take away from the sovereignty and the knowledge of blacks that were here before. Their interaction with the indigenous people that were here before. We take away from the skills, the knowledge. I told you a couple of weeks ago about Estevanico, how Estevanico was used by the Spanish to go to the native tribes ahead of them and speak with them because they trusted black skin. But we're caught up in some lunacy. What makes it worse is that Florida argument is that as well, black people are on our Florida Board of Education. That makes us say, yeah. But they walk the line, Eric. They're walking the line, okay, of telling you factual history mixed in with fallacy. And it's a trap, because what it does is it makes us endeavor to argue with them on an argument that they're already prepared for. They already knew what their responses was going to be. They already knew. So when we all got up here and said, no, but that's not true, that's not true, then they go, no, but it is true, because there is truth in it. And then we get there and we scream 1619, because they gave us that argument too. But that's not the arrival of all black people here. And then that becomes our fault, our issue. Because we lie to ourselves. We accept the foolery of the lie. And we argue in a reductive manner where we're constantly allowing ourselves to be pushed into a lie that is already ready for us. That's already there. They're prepared. And I think that's our biggest problem. We don't, because we're not really learning our history, right? What we're doing is we're regurgitating it. We're regurgitating it. And we're regurgitating it from people who told us this stuff. And we're not thinking about where it comes from. Racism didn't start in 1619. That's not the case. It started well before that. It started actually in the 1400s and the 1500s. There's a process and a step to where we went through. And because we're not representing, we get so caught up on that Dutch ship, the 1619, and those 20 black people. And we want to walk around with t-shirts and we want to argue the fallacy. That's my point to you tonight. If we don't go back to the 1400s, right? If we don't go back to thinking about things well before, I've shared with people for a lot of times about how these things work, how they came to be. The Treaty of Tordesillas, and how agreements were made. And those agreements are a huge part of why 1619 is reductive. Why Ron DeSantis's idea of what he's putting out is reductive. We're not racist. We elected Barack Obama. We're not racist. We have Kamala Harris as VP. Absolutely ridiculous. I absolutely hate putting black face on oppression. But here's the thing. There are people who are put into positions to help us, but they can only give you so much help when you don't want to help yourself. You're not putting the head up to reach them. We can argue some of the failures of Barack Obama's 8 years in office as it pertains to Black and African Americans and people of color. But on the same note, in our own communities, we are failing. We fail to understand the power of the vote. We fail to understand the power of community. We fail to understand how learning is essential to keeping us moving, keeping us going, keeping us growing. We fail. And we willfully fail. And that's a problem. You know, when you look at the one of some of the words from the famous "We Shall Overcome," we always talk about the "We shall overcome someday," but we forget that there's a verse in there that says, "The truth shall make us free. The truth shall make us free. The truth shall make us free someday." We don't want to ascribe to that truth. We selectively choose the things that we want to talk about and the things that we want to learn. And because we don't learn our history, and we learn that we choose to accept things from people that are false, Marxism says a false consciousness, a false understanding of who you are, what you are, and who you are. How you think about your past is important. Because if you are subjected to a false consciousness of who you are, then you accept what people tell you. And we're caught up in that false consciousness. We think we know who we are. We tell people this is what it means to be Black. Young generations often do things believing they're doing something new, which is why learning history and making the connection to modern life is vital to positive progression. I agree. But we can't progress. We can't progress, Tina, if everybody's thought, right? If everybody's thought is that we are less than. Is that we're less than. We live in a stratified society that we're not changing because we're allowing that stratified society to stay that way, where we allow ourselves to stay stratified and put down to the bottom and held down to the bottom. We do that. And then we wait for people who are in favored groups, people who are we consider to be higher on the stratification than us. We wait for them, right, to come and help us. Rather it be a black president, rather it be white liberal society. We wait for them to help us. For them to decide, well, maybe this is unfair. The belief is that people who deal with less, they become restive. And the fact that they kind of say, well, that's what's going to happen to us. How many times have you all out there heard that? Well, that's going to happen. That's just what they're going to do. And we wait for Congress, people to step in and say, no, we shouldn't treat these folks like that. We shouldn't treat them like that. And that's our problem. There's no homogenous identifier in this country. We are selective on what we think is equality. Even in our own communities. Even in our own communities. And so whenever we start to talk about things, people get like, I didn't know that. That's because our literature and our history is a lot more comprehensive than we know. And there's a lot of things out here for us to be able to learn. There's nothing that I share here on Erudition during these interactives that you can't find on your own. And as a matter of fact, I tell you where to go find it, because I believe that a competent historian, right, is supposed to give you places to go. The information is out there. Sources are out there, but we call it secondary because our primary focus is for us to teach a control device. That's what it is. Teachers aren't teaching things on their own. They're teaching from programs, from curriculum, from educational media. They're teaching from things that are provided. And so things don't reach our children and they don't reach our schools. And then we sit here and we ourselves fall into this stuff. We have the largest gap of any country in the world between what historians know and what we are taught. I want you to think about that. There are 5 of you on here tonight. There are 5 of you on here right now that I can see. Maybe more watching that I don't see. But the gap between what is known and what is taught is huge. So we get people who get on media who speak about Black history and they create false narratives. The history is so selective that we can write history books, and they have done it, on Woodrow Wilson, right? Racist president. On Andrew Jackson, racist president. And they can write it without ever mentioning, right, the horrible things that these people have done. They did. How Wilson sent troops to Russia, to South America, with the idea of white supremacy. There was a novelist named Arthur Schlesinger who wrote a book about Andrew Jackson, and he won a Pulitzer Prize for the book. But you know what he never did in that book? He never talked about the Trail of Tears ever in his works on Andrew Jackson. He never really got into the Seminole Wars about Andrew Jackson. That's selective. And so when you have a president who puts Andrew Jackson's picture behind him while he has Native Americans sitting there, and he insults another senator by calling her Pocahontas because he himself wasn't exposed to the history. And even if he was, why should I take it seriously? It's not something that they're teaching me every day. It is what is frustrating the most about teaching history. Because that gap is huge. And the closer we are to the history, the closer we are to it, the less we choose to know about it. The less we choose to know about it. If you don't believe that, I want you to think about this. Those of you who are alive, who lived through 9/11, there were a lot of intricate things that went on after 9/11. But in the textbooks, in the things that were taught, that are being taught to our children who were born after 9/11, what is greatly talked about is not what made this terrorist attack happen, what led to it. The attack on the USS Cole and all of these things that happened before it. What we dwell on is 9/11 and America's reaction and war after it. That is what is taught. But is the information about 9/11 out here? Can you go pull up individual testimonials of people who lived through it? Do you have your own stories of what you lived through during that day? Yes. Those don't make it into the books. Those aren't what are taught to our children in school. Enduring freedom, the fight against terror, the fight going into Iraq and Saddam Hussein, that's what's taught. The same can be said with Vietnam. The same can be said with any war. People don't delve so close into it because they think they know. And we don't share the actual history, the secondary history, as they call it. We accept everything as primary. We have to do better. It seems to be something that I say all the time. It's something that I seem to say all the time. We ignore the Sasha. We ignore it because people tell us, well, we don't know everything. We're too close to it. I posted the other day on Facebook, I said, you have to question historians who will tell you that they cannot find the DNA breakdown that identifies Egyptians as African, but they can tell you about how you are related to an ape hominid. You have to question what is the bias behind that, because that ain't science. If I can trace back to a mitochondrial Eve, and tell you, oh yeah, I believe she was a monkey creature, but I can't tell you from the bones and all of these bones and things that we've extracted from all of these mummies and things that we dug up out of Egypt and all throughout parts of Africa. It's a problem. And we are positioning ourselves to further that problem because we are not challenging things. We are not studying. We are regurgitating. We are saying the things that we hear and not the things that we learn to prove. Dr. King said we are being destroyed by two of our cherished institutions, the family and the community. We have destroyed our lands, our crops. We have corrupted the thoughts of our men, children, and our women. We have corrupted it, and we don't want to know. We don't want to know. And we don't choose to know. And then programs like this one and people who are out here who are teaching, we fight this fight of saying, well, we got to teach them this. We have to let you know this. And I've had older people come tell me, I didn't know this. I wasn't taught this. This wasn't what they taught us in school. And we fall in line. You shouldn't have to go and look at a slave ship or a representation of a slave ship and be surprised. Oh, I didn't know it was like that. You shouldn't ascribe your entire history to just the arrival of slaves. Oh, I'm sorry, the enslaved. Your history is grander, bigger, stronger, wiser, more precious than that. Its association is so far out here and so great, but we don't know it. And every week I feel like when we get on and we talk about these names, these people, these things, it's important because I hope that it stirs something in you. I appreciate your interactions. I appreciate the things that you write into the chat. I appreciate those of you who go out and you share because you understand that it's important that we know who we are. And then I try to encourage some of you who don't know. Like, but for the weather, if you hear some of the thunder in the background, we've been getting an unseasonable amount of weather here in Colorado, and I'm not mad at it because I think that it's actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing. Any questions? Any questions? I've been talking for about 40 I'm back. Woo! Apparently, lightning struck close to the house. I see, Tina, you still in here. It's trouble how easy, blah, 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 blah. What'd you say here? What should we base our thoughts on? What do we not know? And how does that relate to viral social media posts? It depends on what you're saying here. What should we base our thoughts on? I think that we should base our thoughts on making sure that we need to understand that the people who came before us, they didn't have all of the answers. And a lot of the people that came before them, the two generations that have come before us, did not share a lot of our information. So that means that we need to be read. We need to be well read. We need to go in. We need to start pulling up information. And we need to start studying in our churches, in our groups, in our families, in our homes, these things. We need to start asking empirical questions. Who, what, where, why, right? Why did this happen? Because if we start asking those questions and we start doing that kind of work, what we will find is that we start to change our way of thinking. And what do we call it today? The orthodox way of thinking. We will start thinking outside of the box, and we will start asking the questions that need to be asked, the relevant questions that are very important. And we can do better. Okay. I guess it's the same question you asked it. It just kind of repeated. It's not a wrap. I love you. The screen is blank and I can't see or hear anything from it, but I hear you in the background. Yeah, it took me a minute to get back on. It's a little weird. Hey, you know, I'm gonna get about 15 more minutes because we got cut off there for a moment. But I'm open to the five of you. If you see me, for any questions, things that you want to ask here tonight, even off topic of what we're talking about for these last few minutes while we're on the program, just in case we get cut off. I'm open to that. I want to encourage you to enter things into the chat and make this session as interactive as possible. And I also want you to share and subscribe and get people to start watching these programs. Someone just asked me that they would have saw me as pro 1619 project. I'm not, in the way that I'm okay with the history as the history is, but I do not believe that we should be marketing the idea of our history starting with slavery. That's just how I feel. So if that's the thing that you take from tonight from me, it's not that I don't want you to learn history. Read the 1619 Project. Go and if that's where you need to start, but don't stop there. Go pick up Ivan von Cinema's book. Go and read Lerone Bennett Jr.'s Before the Mayflower. Go do your study. Go read about the treaties, the Age of Discovery. Go read about the African Phoenicians. Are here. Because I think if you do that, you will be better served. You will be better served if you go and pull up and understand that the Essentio de Negro, right, that I've talked about many times before, that when that came about, the contracting, the commercializing, the franchising of slavery, right? But that's not the beginning of our history. That's not just who we are. And if we can really understand that, if we can really get beyond that, we will be better served. We have mental chains on us We have a selective conditioning that makes us only want to see a certain thing. And I think that that's my issue with that. That's my major issue with that. We're not growing outside of that. We're not being better. Anybody, any question, any question. I see some of you are still with us. You're still seeing us. And even if you just put in chat, let me know that you don't see us. That'd be good too. I just want to make sure that we keep this as interactive as possible. So I'm going to start just allowing toward the end of the sessions for people to start talking and leaving comments. Anybody? Anybody? All right. Well, if nobody's going to ask a question, let me close this session by saying this. There are a lot of things that we could talk about every week on Thursdays, and I want us to talk about them, and I want to cover some of these things. For the last couple of weeks, I've been really trying to lean more on the interaction of the session as opposed to hitting you with a whole deep dive lesson on things. But we're going to get back into doing that coming up here, because I need to fill this time with information, and sometimes I feel that has to happen with me just talking, me getting on here and providing that knowledge for an hour and just doing a deep dive, and we'll do that. But I also want us to start getting into this history. I gave you many names tonight, and I do that as we go through these sessions. Estevanico, who was a Black explorer for the Spanish, the conquistadors. Go look up Estevanico and see where we kind of how we started, right? Understand that we're not just here as enslaved. Go pull up Estevanico's information and learn some of those things that you know from that history. I want you to start to go in and look at these folks' names and places. Go look up. We talked about Andrew Jackson and how they didn't talk about the Seminole Wars. Go pull up information about the Seminole Wars, right? Go pull up about Woodrow Wilson, President Woodrow Wilson's invasion overseas and in South America, right? And how Wilson intervened in South American politics and tried to reestablish American supremacy over those areas of the world. Go pull all that information up. Grow your knowledge. Grow your knowledge base. I think someone asked, or Tina just asked, where do we put our focus? That's where our focus should be. Our focus should always be on learning, on being smarter, on being wiser, on opening up our understanding, and using shows like this to fact check, to fact check what's going on. You said what happened to the new opening. We just didn't put it on today, Eric, but it wasn't. We've been having so many technical problems today. We've been having so many technical problems today. We just really wanted to get on and do what we could for the hour or so that we're on, because yeah, we had so much weather coming in, and I apologize to you all who are watching and we're having to endure this, but it is what it is. I'm not God. I can't make the weather do what it's going to do, but I can get on and try to better utilize our time and talk to you about these things. So I'm not going to belabor you all too much longer because one, we'll be coming up on that hour, even though we've been in and out, and also because I don't know when we may just be completely shut off. So I will encourage you to leave your questions, comments, anything that you have. Leave it in the comments, and we will. If we can't get to it tonight because of the way things are going, we will definitely answer you in chat and things like that. Tomorrow, I will probably put something I got to verify. Me and Tina may be on a show tomorrow evening where we will I don't know what that is. We'll be on the show tomorrow. Mike on Man Up Real Talk Show. We may be on there. What is your Rosa Parks question? I may not have saw it. Put it in there again. I'll answer it before we get off here tonight. You know, I don't ever really have a problem in answering a question and going in on some of this stuff. So I'm here. Whatever you want to ask. Modern history, later history, whatever it may be. Just type it in there and let us know. So here's the thing about Rosa Parks. A lot of the history that is put out about Rosa Parks comes down to the fact that it's been said that it was contrived. In other words, she was one of the ones who was used to start the whole Montgomery bus boycott movement. I don't know if there is truth to her being ran out of the state. But what I will say is that, as the movement goes on and things happen, identifiers and things change, right? But she was involved in civil rights for pretty much her entire life. And I think that people tell these things about her. They're not historically based on truth, right? People leave because maybe they don't want to deal with the lunacy that's going on. Maybe they don't want to deal with the threat of death. But I wouldn't say ran out of a state. Ida B. Wells was ran out of a state, right? She was ran out of Tennessee. Because I think that there's safety there. But I won't go as far as saying that she was run out by racists. She stood her ground even to the day she died. And though she did move out of Alabama, that doesn't mean that she necessarily was ran out, Eric. I hope that answers your question. Unless there was something more deeper that you're talking about there. She, there's a threat that is still there, especially when your name becomes identified with starting a very effective movement, especially when the idea is about resistance. All right, this broadcast thing has been in and out. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to let you all let you be, and until this coming week. As I said, we may be on the show tomorrow. I don't know if we have the specifics yet, and we will let you know on the Erudition Network. We will send that out. Share. Again, we did not put the banner up today. I'm not going to worry about it. It just wasn't up. But if you want to support the Erudition Network, we do have a Cash App that we take donations from. That's the Erudition Network. You just type that in there, and whatever you would like to share with the network will greatly help us. It's what pays for our mics and our cameras and our lights and the different things that we have, and help to support you by helping us to provide you information. All right, I'm gonna get out of here. Thank you all for those of you who stuck around through all of these weather issues, and I hope to see you all again next week on the interactive. Next week we will do an actual full-on lesson, because we got to get back to doing that, because if everybody doesn't interact, then we need to make sure that we're at least giving you more and more. I will drop some of those names that I mentioned in the chats for the this episode, because I really want you to do some study on some of those names that I dropped, so you can get out there and open up your own mind and learning. All right, but until next time, you all be blessed, be blessed, be blessed. Thank you.